Hello, everybody. Mike Strout here with genConnect, and I have the privilege of sitting today with Dean Kamen. Thank you for joining us, Dean.
Always good to be here.
So we're doing a live chat today, and we've got several questions for Dean, and we appreciate you taking the time. The first one is from William Hooper, who wants to know, what's the one invention you would like to see invented in your lifetime?
I have actually been asked the question, what one invention would I like to see in my lifetime? I've given it a lot of thought, and I'm always reluctant to say this because I've learned that you should never say never. And I've learned that almost everything that one generation thinks is nothing but science fiction turns out to be ordinary science in the next generation. Jules Verne, 100 years ago, talked about ships that could go underwater or could travel into space. Wasn't that ridiculous? Well, cloning was, even 20 years ago, the stuff of science fiction. So I've learned never to say never. However, the one invention that I really want, that I'm afraid I'm not going to ever see, is a time machine. I'd love to be able to, and in the true sense of time machine, not wormholes and relativistic time dilation, but I'd love to put myself in a little machine and go back and have a conversation with Archimedes, or Galileo, or Isaac Newton, or Albert Einstein. And then maybe I'd like to go forward 100 years and see what's it really going to be like, or 1,000 years. But I'm quite afraid that I will never get to do that. So that's the one invention I'm looking for, a real time machine.
That's great. Our next one is from Teresa Maureen, who wants to know what originally inspired you to invent and innovate, and what continues to inspire you today.
I was really inspired to start making stuff for a couple of reasons. My older brother was in med school when I was in high school, and he'd come back and he was so frustrated. He's a brilliant guy. He's an MD and a PhD and a pediatric cancer specialist trying to help babies, newborns with cancer. And he had these great ideas to use therapies that were typically used on adults, but there was no way to administer precisely enough, tiny enough amounts of drugs to make it practical. So I'd get down in the basement and build stuff for him to do that with because I thought I could help my brother cure cancer in these kids. And I learned from doing that how good you feel when you actually solve somebody's problem, something as big as that. And I just decided after that that getting a job and working somewhere, trading a piece of my life for a salary seemed like it couldn't be a fair deal. You spend more of your time working than playing or with friends. So I wanted to make sure every morning when I got up, I'd be excited about working on something that was important to me. And I didn't think a job could do that. So I decided in high school I would never get a job. And I've never gotten a paycheck in my life. I would look for really big problems and see if I could find great ways to apply technology to solve those problems. And if I succeeded, even once in a while, it would give me the resources to keep going and not need a job. And even if I failed, I'd feel like I was challenging myself and working on interesting things, learning things. So I really became an innovator because, on the one hand, I didn't want to get a job. And on the other, I wanted to work on really important problems, and that's what innovation's about.
So this one's from the League of Humans. They want to know, how are innovators tackling the clean water crisis?
I love the question of how are innovators tackling the clean water crisis because I and a very, very smart, passionate group of engineers at my company have been working on the clean water problem for a long time. There's many different approaches to the problem, and depending on the situation, some are probably better than others. We chose to make a general purpose small machine that could take water that was polluted either by industrial waste, inorganics, arsenic, or chrome, or heavy metals, or organics, bioburden, Cryptosporidia gerardia. But we said, let's make a machine big enough to make a significant amount of water, enough for 100 people every day, 1,000 liters, small enough that you could carry it to where you might need it after a disaster or a monsoon or an earthquake, or putting it in a village where they don't have access to really clean water. And we said if we could make a simple machine big enough to do that, small enough to move, that doesn't need a constant supply of membranes and filters and chemicals to deal with each different problem, we'd be able to make it something that could scale to help billions of people. And I'm happy to say that we have now finished the first couple of sets of trials with a great partner that has the biggest global logistics footprint to deliver stuff that's ever been built, Coca-Cola. They're in every village in the world, and we're hoping that as our machine gets better and simpler and more capable of dealing with all these issues, and our experience with the Coca-Cola company gets to where we find better, more cost-effective logistic ways to get them out there, that over time this thing will scale up and provide hundreds of millions of people with clean water.
That's incredible. Our last one is from Teresa, who would like to know if you have one invention that you're most proud of.
Asking me the question, which of our projects I'm most proud of, I think would be like asking a parent which of their children they love the best. I love all my projects, but they're very different. How do you compare a prosthetic arm that gives a soldier that gave his arm for us the ability to pick up a grape and eat it? But it's only going to be a project that you hope affects a few dozen or a few hundred people. How do you compare that very sophisticated prosthetic arm to a water machine that might help billions of people? Or how do you compare those to my first program, which has already affected 1 million kids? And among those 1 million kids, there's going to be some that create whole new technologies in the world. And, you know, as a kid, I think everybody's proud of themselves by learning that first bit of logic as a kid where somebody says, if you could have one and only one wish, what would you wish for? And sooner or later, every kid comes up, I'd wish for 10 more wishes. And then as I get to the 9th, I'll ask for 10 more, so I'll never run out. That's what my wish is. In the same way, I would say to you, maybe my most long-term impact as an innovator will be creating the innovation of first, because it's a way to invent inventors. And I hope I've started 1 million kids, a whole generation of kids, to set out to become the innovators of the future. And through them, I think we'll have leverage across this whole planet, making it a better place.
Dean, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with our audience. And thank you for your questions. And for more with Dean Kamen, please continue to check out genConnect.com.